For 100 years, the Department of Game and Inland Fisheries has been working to restore and preserve Virginia's wildlife. For much of that time, it's been a daunting challenge. Even in the early 1900s, most Virginians, like most Americans, still believed that wildlife could be hunted, trapped, and fished without limit, that it was an inexhaustible resource, always there for the taking. It was an idea that had persisted since before the founding of the nation, and it seemed undeniable.
If you go back to 1750, Thomas Jefferson asked 8 fellows to make a trip westward. And on that trip, they kept a journal of the wildlife they encountered. And it is incredible what they recorded in terms of the abundance of not only white-tailed deer, black bear, the eastern wood bison, eastern elk. They were very plentiful. I mean, in 1750, 100 years later, they were being decimated and their habitats were being altered dramatically as people settled. The last elk in 1855 and the last mountain lion in 1883. And really by the start of the 1900s, the species that we take for granted that are so abundant now, the white-tailed deer and turkeys and black bears, if there had been an endangered species list, they would have been on it. So the department was formed in 1916 to begin to address the issues about how to protect wildlife and how to restore wildlife habitat so that we can enjoy better game populations going forward. There was a lot of experimentation, a lot of trial and error. For example, one idea was let's go out and kill all the predators, and that way all the prey species will be abundant. That didn't work out very well. The idea that we could raise enough animals in a game farm situation to just stock and fill the forest and the fields of Virginia, those animals, it turned out, didn't have the attributes that wild animals need to survive. But the science of wildlife management kept developing, and we learned that trapping animals in the wild and relocating them and releasing them was a way to initiate and start new populations. Without knowing it, we were following what would be the North American model. The keystone of that is that wildlife belongs to everyone, and it's held in public trust, and it should be managed on a sustainable basis. It's a very important philosophy and an approach, and it's only found in North America. It's nowhere else in the world, and it is the most successful form of wildlife conservation on the planet.
The work of DGIF's wildlife managers goes on throughout the year, according to the ancient cycles of wildlife behavior. It's midwinter on Assateague Island. Huge flocks of waterfowl like snow geese fill the sky. To keep track of migratory waterfowl, biologists employ a number of techniques. At the edge of a pond, a large net, baited with bushels of corn, lies hidden beneath a layer of straw. Gary Costanzo is the department's chief waterfowl biologist on the eastern shore. He carefully loads the rocket system that will propel the net over a flock of ducks early the next morning, if they come to the pond during the night, which is by no means certain. In any case, Gary and his colleague Bridie Farmer will be back here before sunrise in bitterly cold weather. At first light, the ducks are there, in large numbers. But it takes some time before they are calm enough to approach the shore and feed atop the hidden net. Now the race is on. Gary, Bridie, and a team of volunteers have to work fast to free the ducks without injuring them and get them into the warmth of straw-filled crates for transport to the banding station.
We ring them with bands, so whenever that bird shows up again, either in another trapping operation or possibly it gets shot by a hunter, that's the information we need to manage these birds. It gives us a good reference for setting our hunting seasons. How long should the hunting season be? How many should we take based on how many of the hunters are taking now?
It's late winter at Bosher's Dam on the James River. Chilly, but with a hint of spring in the air. Beside the dam is a structure known as a fish ladder. It allows migratory fish to bypass the dam and swim upstream to spawn in historic habitats unavailable to them for a century or more. DGIF has taken the lead in an effort to open up hundreds of miles of spawning habitat to fish such as the striped bass and American shad. As the fish gather here before entering the latter, it's a good place for department scientists to find out which species are using it and in what numbers. Running an electric current through the water and temporarily stunning any nearby fish, DGIF's Alan Weaver and his colleagues can update their database on each species, including size, weight, and gender. The fish ladder is an adequate solution here, but elsewhere in the state, DGIF has worked with other agencies and organizations to remove dams entirely.
Anybody 12 and under may begin fishing, and have a good day and good luck to everybody.
April in Fredericksburg means it's time for the annual Kids Trout Fishing Day. Virginia's future anglers get to try their luck in the well-stocked waters of Old Cossie Pond with professional advice and encouragement from Conservation Police Officer Beth Garrett.
There you go. Now you can fish it, okay?
Today, some of the kids have done well, with good-looking rainbows to bring home and brag about. The others, not so lucky, may have learned something about the virtues of patience, perseverance, and using the right bait.
Did you catch it?
Many of the trout that lure anglers young and old to the lakes and rivers of Virginia are raised in DGIF hatcheries, like the Montebello Fish Cultural Station in Nelson County. Tom Tiers has managed the facility for the past 10 years, feeding and caring for over 100,000 rainbow, brown, and brook trout in a series of freshwater tanks fed by a mountain spring. Now, in the warming weather of late April, Tom and his co-workers begin the annual stream stocking program.
The trout program is very important because there's been a lot of impacts to our natural waters, like industrialization, urbanization, sedimentation, agricultural land uses that have caused many of our streams to be extirpated of the natural fish populations. So aquaculture allows us to supplement those populations by producing different types of fish at different life stages, while also being good stewards of our resources, making sure that we're conserving the natural population.
Conservation Police Sergeant Sonny Nipper is on hand to help place the trout in locations where they will thrive and provide plenty of exciting days ahead for anglers of all ages. One of the most spectacularly successful wildlife restoration projects in Virginia and the nation has been the rescue of the bald eagle from near extinction. But today, there are other raptors that need help. DGIF biologist Sergio Harding is working with the Center for Conservation Biology and the National Park Service to rebuild Virginia's population of threatened peregrine falcons, known as the world's fastest bird for their ability to dive at over 200 miles an hour. This spring, the team heads to the Norris Bridge at Tappahannock, where a falcon pair is nesting. For their 3 chicks, learning to fly over water will be hazardous, and in spite of the parents' cries of alarm, Brian Watts of the CCB will remove them before they start to take wing. The chicks aren't very happy either, as they get banded for future tracking and identification. Next stop for the young raptors is Shenandoah National Park. Park Service biologist Rolf Gubler maintains 2 enclosures known as hacking boxes. For the next few weeks, the chicks will be fed daily until their flight feathers are fully grown. Then the doors will be left open, and the windy cliffs of the Blue Ridge Mountains will be their flight school. Three weeks have passed. CCB's Mitchell Bird, Brian, Rolf, and Sergio assemble on the ridge to see how the young peregrine falcons are doing. After 2 hours of anxious watching, there's very good news. All 3 of them are alive and soaring on the Shenandoah breezes. For a bit longer, they will come back to the hecking boxes for a free meal. But soon these speedy raptors will be off in different directions to find mates and, it is hoped, to raise their own families. Another of DGIF's partner organizations is the Wildlife Center of Virginia near Waynesboro, founded in 1982 to rehabilitate injured, illegally owned, sick, and abandoned creatures of all kinds. Among its permanent residents are Maggie, a peregrine falcon who lost her left eye, and Buddy, the bald eagle with a crooked beak.
We work very, very closely with the Department of Game and Inland Fisheries, and they have been close partners from day one with our organization's efforts, not only to provide care to injured and orphaned wildlife, but also to address the environmental issues that are affecting wildlife, whether it's human behavior, whether it's an environmental pollutant, some type of contaminant, or indeed illegal activity. We work hand in hand with this agency to pursue their mission and to pursue our own.
Today, in mid-spring at the Wildlife Center, DGIF's chief bear biologist, Jamie Sajecki, is here to greet a little foundling.
So this is a black bear cub. She's very small. She's just a little over 3 pounds and probably about 6 weeks old. A lot of times people will find bear cubs and think that they're abandoned when they're really not. Obviously, they're adorable, but as you can see, they're a handful. They don't make good pets.
The department's goal has been to bring healthy populations of black bears back to their historical habitats throughout Virginia. Jamie's colleague, Katie Martin, is bringing 3 youngsters to their new home at Fort Pickett.
Well, so we released 3 yearling bear cubs from the Wildlife Center. So they were orphans from last year, and now that they've gotten up 40, 50 pounds, they're able to make it on their own. This time of year, the mothers would start kicking them away anyway as they come out of the den here by the breeding season by July and August. So we brought them out here and turned them loose in some good habitat, and hopefully they'll grow up to be big, thriving bears.
Summer has arrived in the Appalachians, where Department fish biologists Paul Bucas and Gary Martell revisit one of the myriad streams studied over the 2 decades they devoted to a first-ever statewide survey of Virginia's trout populations. Here they find a still healthy population of brook trout, Virginia's state fish, beloved by all freshwater anglers.
Basically, the program got started because Virginia didn't have a good inventory of their wild trout streams. We were the ones to go out and collect the information and to build a database so that we could use it in the future to make management decisions, both regulatory for fishermen, and also it's come in handy quite a bit for environmental purposes as well.
What we did was we went from watershed to watershed with topo maps, and then we'd go into the streams and we'd sample them frequently with shocking devices that we actually had to construct ourselves. And we got to find out basically where the trout existed in Virginia, along with a lot of other species. Really like being the first people to catalog a lot of the streams.
By the end of July, the large colonies of seabirds on the barrier islands of Virginia's eastern shore have completed another breeding season. Flocks of pelicans will stay a few more weeks to feed on the abundant fish of the Atlantic coast, along with the amazing black skimmers. For the last 4 months, access to these pristine and protected islands has been restricted to minimize disturbance of nesting birds in this critical area of the Atlantic flyway. DGIF Conservation Police Sergeant Steve Garvis heads out to Wreck Island to check on the seabird colonies a few days before it and other islands are reopened on a limited basis to the public.
I've been here since 1994. For 22 years, I've patrolled the waterways, the marshes, the back corners of the eastern shore. It's been a dream job, something I wanted to do since I was 16 years old, to be a game warden. Our mission is to protect the future generations of the natural resources here in the Commonwealth.
It has been a successful breeding season, but summer weather here can suddenly change for the worse. The birds will hunker down as Steve winds up his day with a prudent, high-speed dash back to the dock. As fall comes to Buchanan County, the valleys echo with a sound not heard in Virginia in nearly a century, the bugling or mating call of the bull elk. The DGIF mission to bring back these magnificent animals to the hills and fields they once roamed is led by board member Leon Boyd.
A lot of folks will compare elk to deer. Well, they're a deer family. They're all in the same family, but elk are much larger. The bulls will get up to about 900 pound, a mature bull. The cows, 550, 600 pound. This year we've seen 22 newborn calves, so we know the cycle's working real well here in Virginia.
These elk are immigrants, transported from Kentucky to their new habitat on the reclaimed land of old strip mines. Leon and his colleagues have been busy planting thousands of saplings and shrubs that elk love to eat, transforming a once barren landscape.
It's mine reclamation property that we've just helped as volunteers for all wildlife, elk, deer, bear, birds, honeybees, everything's utilizing what we've done here.
Today, there are over 400 elk, gathered in herds of 10 to 20 cows and calves, ruled by a dominant bull whose authority is always being challenged at this time of the year. Once Virginia's elk herds grow larger and prove they are here to stay, DGIF plans to allow limited hunting. But for now, they enjoy year-round protection and the admiration of all Virginians lucky enough to spot them as they come up from the valleys to feed on the fresh vegetation of the mountaintops. The Clinch River in southwest Virginia sparkles with early autumn beauty. But back in 1997, a toxic waste spill wiped out much of its aquatic life. Since then, at DGIF's Aquatic Wildlife Conservation Center, biologists have been working to grow and restore the river's once abundant population of freshwater mussels. The center has raised nearly 3 million juvenile mussels of 24 different species, many of them federally endangered or threatened. Once they reach sufficient size and are marked for future identification, they are transported to the Clinch and other rivers and released. Mussels perform a critical role in maintaining water quality. As they feed on algae, plankton, and sediment, they help purify the aquatic ecosystem. The center's biologists and volunteers have released over 600,000 of these little creatures to the wild. Today, they are adding several thousand more, hoping that most will survive and be cleansing the river as long as this 40-year-old has. Mid-October finds super angler Stephen McClandrick and his daughter Shannon out early on Burnt Mills Lake near Suffolk. Careful study of species behavior, baits and lures, weather patterns, and a limitless passion for being out on the water with rod and reel have made Stephen a 4-time State Angler of the Year, with hundreds of citation fish to his credit. At 16, Shannon has already caught citation fish of her own, and she never stops learning from Dad.
Here in Virginia, we're blessed with a phenomenal fishery, thanks to the Department of Game and Inland Fisheries. We have species in Virginia that we didn't have just 20 or 30 years ago. Fishing is a great sport. It's for everybody. The young, the old, doesn't matter if you're male or female. You don't have to be in shape to play. It's a great sport.
It's still weeks before the opening of hunting season, but not too soon for Sharon Townley to begin training her pointer, Madison, at Shady Grove Kennels near Remington. As hunting season approaches, DGIF's large staff of instructors and volunteers is once again deployed throughout the state, holding firearms safety classes for hunters of all ages, handing down the lessons of a lifetime in the outdoors. The rest of the year, from October into December, brings Virginia's avid hunters out to the forests, fields, and wetlands. For Tom Guess, daughter Emily, and son Thomas, turkey hunting in Sussex is a family affair and a bonding experience unlike any other. For bow hunter Andy McDonough, a full weekend in the Prince George Woods reattunes his senses to the sights and sounds of the natural world. An expert shot with the compound bow, his patience and keen eye are sometimes rewarded and sometimes not. Not since the early 1800s has hunting in Virginia been as rewarding as it is today. As veteran outdoorsmen like to say, these are the good old days of hunting. A critical factor in preserving wildlife is DGIF's land purchasing program. Over 200,000 acres now designated as wildlife management areas. Habitats for both game and non-game species, permanently protected from development, but open for hunting, fishing, and outdoor recreation. On a tidal creek in Essex County, retired lawyers Hill Welford and Tim Hayes are starting their 6th decade of waterfowl hunting. When the early duck season arrives and the decoys are set out, it's hard to tell who is more excited, the hunters or the dogs. With the arrival of winter, the department completes its 100th year of wildlife restoration. It is unquestionably a success story, thanks in large part to the license fees and sporting equipment taxes paid by hunters and anglers. But the road ahead is full of uncertainty.
The founding fathers who started this agency certainly had a daunting challenge to figure out how to restore wildlife populations in our great Commonwealth. But the challenges we're now facing are unprecedented in terms of the magnitude of them and the rate at which things are changing. We have more than 9 million people in Virginia now. The population is growing all across the country. Issues like water resources, climate change, and how do we plan for those types of things? How will that change things in the landscape? But again, with good people and good science and the North American model as our template or our compass, I'm more than confident that our agency will continue in the next 100 years to be able to live up to the task that it's assigned.